If there's 12 levels, they're on the 13th level.
With dreadlocks and mohawks, Fishbone united the divided communities of America. They made it okay for black kids to slam dance and brought the funk to the punk.
Welcome to Rock Docs, a podcast about music documentaries, brought to you by the good folks at Treble Media. Treblezine.com. Check them out. Support their Patreon. All that good stuff. I'm Dave Lisbram, here with my co-host,
Andrew Keats.
And today we are talking about the film Everyday Sunshine, The Story of Fishbone from 2010. Let's see. Co-directed by Lev Anderson and Chris Metzler. It's about the band Fishbone, and this was selected by our very special guest, comedian, Yo Gabba Gabba writer, man about town, person whose band I used to go see in the early 2000s, and here we are, reunited, and it feels so good. Dallas McLaughlin.
Wow,
how you doing,
thank
buddy?
you. I'm doing really, really good. Thank you for mentioning Yo Gabba Gabba. I'm sure the two go hand in hand, listeners of this podcast and kids shows.
And they used to go to Bad Credit shows back in 2004, probably. That's
that's
our market.
I hope so. I really, really hope so. It is weird. Oh, go ahead.
I think that the Bad Credit attendee, I think, probably has a significant overlap. Although at this point, maybe, honestly, the Yo Gabba Gabba watcher may be like 25 at this point, right?
I've been doing shows, plays. I'm an actor, guys. I've been doing a lot of theater the last few years, and now it is weird that somebody will find out, or I'll casually mention, like you just in conversation, we worked on Yo Gabba Gabba, whatever, and they will lose their damn minds because they are 25 now, like they are in their 20s, and I'm doing shows with them. And they can't understand it. And I'm like, well, and it doesn't make sense to me when they get excited. Because I'm like, why are you have kids? And they're like, no, we were kids when this show was on. And I'm like, oh, that makes me feel terrible. But glad you liked it. Thanks, buddy. But yeah, they liked it. And honestly, though, that's amazing because my kids hate it. So
really? Oh, dude.
Yeah.
I feel for you.
My
I
oldest,
feel for you because I can't pawn anything off on my kids. There's no recommendation I can make.
They don't,
but at the very least,
wait,
it's
your
not
kids
my
don't
work.
subscribe to Axios?
they've never cared about Axios. They've never cared about
land use issues.
Their interest level in city hall politics is nil. But I mean, I can't even get them to like the Little Rascals that came out in '93 or whatever. So if I was a writer on that show, that would hurt me.
It does hurt. And I asked my 9-year-old, I tried it when she was a little one. I tried to get her into it. They sent me a bunch of DVDs, and all this other stuff. And they sent some swag, and couldn't care less. Didn't like it at all. My 2-year-old now has watched 2 episodes and that was enough. She's never asked for it again. It's pretty sad. The only show I've ever worked on that any of my kids got into was Shimmer and Shine. Did you ever watch Shimmer and Shine?
Can't
Genie's Divine.
Okay.
It was a huge hit. I had no idea it was such a huge hit. I helped develop the show. And then years later, it went on the air and it went crazy. And then when my daughter found out that I helped develop it, she got all excited. And then I had the creator of the show send some swag from the genies, like little autographs and stuff. And I'll tell you, I was the coolest dad for 2 months.
Yeah.
Because then she hated it after 2 months because that's how it goes.
Yeah, that is how it goes.
Well,
now,
all the Shimmer and Shine heads out there.
Have they had a phase this year with your new album, I Didn't Start the Fire and Other Lies? Has that gone through?
They're super into it. I did realize that my daughter started YouTubing me, and that's a bad thing.
Oh, geez.
YouTubing you?
Yeah,
she
YouTubing
followed
me.
she dials you up on YouTube, huh?
Yeah, she can. Well, I have a lot of stand-up on YouTube, and
yeah.
It's not clean.
Yeah.
And so she has found some things, and then she's like, my friend and I, we Googled you, and we started watching some of your stand-up, but then her parents made us turn it off. And I was like, checks out, all the boxes, check out. No, they have not gotten into my album yet. My new album, I Didn't Start the Fire and Other Lies. Thank you, Andy, which is available now on Apple Music and Bandcamp. But I wish that they did. They might learn something about their father for once in their lives.
Okay.
Like the last thing they want to learn about, probably. But.
Well, if you guys don't, I mean, I started doing storytelling albums. Like there's a show in San Diego that happens every month called Vamp with So Say We All, where they do like monthly storytelling shows. Like 6 to 8 people get together. They go and tell a story at Whistle Stop Bar. It's always super packed. It's such a good time. Everybody has a blast. And during the pandemic, I started realizing that I had all these stories recorded. And so I'm like, why don't I just start putting out albums? Because I didn't really want to do stand-up anymore. So I started putting out these albums. And people liked them, guys. People actually liked the albums. They got really popular on the charts. And that was exciting. And I was like, why does anybody...
The hot R&B hits chart?
It was hot adult contemporary. Yeah, it was really...
Latin folk?
It was me and Michelle Branch. We were... but yeah, so like this album I put out, the new one, is all stories about stuff that I've done or jobs that I've had. And so speaking of bad credit, there is a very long story at the end of the album that explains the rise and fall of bad credit in very, very somber, but I would say punk rock overtones. It's fun. It's a really fun story to tell because a lot of people didn't know what happened. We don't know what happened. It just happened. And it's a really fun way to tell people when they go, whatever happened to bad credit? I can just go listen to the album. It's just, I can't tell you in 2 minutes. It's a 17-minute long story. Go listen.
Yeah, I got to say, you know, I've known you for many years now, and I only know like the rough outlines of the things you've done in your life. It's only when I listen to your stand up and your storytelling that I go, oh, okay, those are all the details that fill in there.
That's why anybody gives a shit about this guy.
That's what I didn't know between point A and point B about what Dallas was up to.
Yeah, it has been I've had a weird life. I've always committed to never having a real day job, and that has led me down the path of doing some very strange things, which the new album is all about. I was a mime at SeaWorld for a couple of years and worked there for 20 years. And so I talk about that in detail and have yet to receive a cease and desist, which is very nice.
You were like probably quite famous among the youth of San Diego County during that period. The people who were attending SeaWorld were probably very familiar with you.
Somebody brought up, when I put out the album, somebody brought up that there's a good chance that if you were in San Diego from like 1998 to 2010, you saw me somewhere.
Yeah, right.
Which is like a good get, like between Bad Credit and SeaWorld and all the other random stuff, stand up or whatever, the theater, there's a really good chance that you did see me doing something somewhere and maybe hated me. There's a good chance of that too. Yeah. I was not the most popular sea lion and otter performer. People did not like my deadpan Buster Keaton-esque delivery.
We tried to get all the more popular sea lion and otter performers on this podcast, but they all turned us down. So
they had the worst. They had the worst suggestions for documentaries. They were they're just awful.
First off, I know you're lying because there's no way they'd turn you down ever. They would immediately wait. Someone cares about me. They would immediately jump at this opportunity. Yeah, the album. I mean, it's really fun for people to hear stuff because I'm very forward about. I'm kind of. Are we allowed to curse on this podcast?
Yeah, I think so.
No,
I know you. I heard one with I heard the Jim Ruland episode, which I'm such a Jim Ruland fan, and there was some cursing, but I didn't know if you guys made exceptions because it's Jim Ruland. You have to make certain exceptions.
You may curse,
but I'm kind of an asshole. And
you can't say that.
Oh shoot! And and so like. A lot of the stories are how I kind of burned the bridge. In fact, the cover of the album is me in front of a bridge on fire with giant beer bottles trying to put out the fire because it's kind of the story of my life. So anyway, I go listen up and I'll get this out of the way before we start talking about the thing. It's been out for a while. It's been out for a few months. I've been very, very happy with how well it's done. In the realm of like being in the zeitgeist, I guess you could say, monetarily. But it's done very well as people listening to it and streaming and all that stuff. So I'm very happy about that. But if you go to Bandcamp, and get it off of Bandcamp. It's only like $7 on Bandcamp. If you pay the $7 in Bandcamp, what I did was I put together a secret album called Secrets, 3 S's. And on that album that you can only get on Bandcamp, and once you buy the album, I'll see it, and I'll email you the private link to this Secrets album, the glories of Bandcamp. It has tracks from like Bad Credit that we never put out. It has stand-up tracks that I've never put out. It has tracks from my old punk bands from like the late 90s. Nice. And some secret punk bands that we only played shows and never released music, but we did record music. All of this stuff. It's like 18 tracks. There's tracks I used to produce these albums called with a guy named Wally Bunting, and there's some of those songs on there that we did. And in fact, Wally Bunting is playing Swami's Christmas show on December 22nd at Whistle Stop, so I'll be there for that if anybody wants to come see Wally Bunting. But all of that is available. If you go to Bandcamp, dallasmclaughlin.bandcamp.com, buy the new album. Once you buy it for full price, it's $7. I give you 18 tracks, secret tracks that you would have never gotten before. So that's my hopefully incentive to get people to go to Bandcamp and buy it.
I think so. And with a little CD era like mentality there, the secret tracks. It's great. You know?
What's fun is I released this on the album. I wanted to do that. I wanted to make a secret track.
Yeah.
Because I love that shit. You know, where
that was the best. When you'd find it,
best.
You'd like go to school and somebody'd be like, I found one. You'd be like, oh, what? You'd have to.
You go back and you fast forward. Remember when Less Than Jake and I forget the other band did the secret track at the beginning?
Yes.
Like you had to rewind the first track once you started it. Yeah. Anyway, I put out this thing where I did the Bad Credit story, and then I had a little bit of our hit Bill Gates play, and then I lowered the track, and then I had just random sounds and noises for like 4 minutes, and then I went into a secret track called Kevin, which was the story about the first band I was ever in. And I let my best friend Sean O'Donnell listen to it, and I was like, "Dude, just check out the album." And I sent it to Sean and a mutual friend here, Nick McCann, one of my best friends in the world, Nick McCann. I sent it to both of them.
Regular Rock Docs guest here.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most. When we talk about Rock Docs, there is a superior opinion, and it's always Nick's. Nick didn't even listen to it, what I sent him. And Sean goes, "What the hell is this?" And I'm like, "Dude, it's a secret track." And he goes, "That's stupid." And it just deflated me. It completely deflated me. So I just got rid of the secret track because I couldn't understand how someone who was in the music business thought that was so stupid. So I hate Sean. And we don't
Sean's
talk
out.
anymore.
We're
Sean's
just here
out.
for you to air your grievances, Dallas.
Yeah. What's next, man? You know what? Fuck the Wild Animal Park. All right. I got some really.
Okay.
No, anyway.
Let's roll into this. So, welcome to Rock Docs.
Sponsored by Axios.
Yeah, sponsored by Axios. All right. So, Fishbone. Prior to watching this film, Andy, what was your relationship with Fishbone?
When I was in middle school, which would have been a little bit after their like the height of their fame, they were a band that sort of like came into my orbit as like if you were even as a poser, skateboarder or rollerblader or whatever people were, those kids were like, and this was in Maryland, mind you, not Southern California, so there was like a lot of posership, but that was like that was one of the bands that you would get, and so I was exposed to them that way. And I gotta say the level of familiarity I have with like the guys in it, I have to just assume that I saw them on MTV at least a fair amount prior to that. Only because I just can't place where I would have otherwise known like the personality and look of both Norwood and you know and Angelo. You know,
yeah.
And they're so familiar to me that I know I have, but I can't place why that would have been. So I don't know.
But you haven't. Anyway. You've not knowingly listened to a Fishbone album.
Oh yeah, no, I did in middle school. Certainly, certainly. When I was like listening to like Less Than Jake, NoFX, Rancid.
That's crazy to me that got to you in Maryland.
It's amazing.
That is crazy to me.
So yeah, I grew up in San Diego, and I guess they were kind of like in the, they were like a band you'd hear about or something. And I was just never like in the scene or whatever. So I mean, I'd certainly seen them on TV and MTV, whatever. I saw them play, on at on Fraternity Row, the University of Southern California. This would have been like, let's say, 1998. I'm guessing. I remember it being, fun. It was like a daytime something or other. I remember being fun. Angela was wearing like a tailored suit, but with the suit trousers were shorts. That kind of look. Always a good look, classic.
It's still a
And
good look. Yeah,
he was rocking the
timeless.
cane. It was in the cane era.
We call that the Alicia Silverstone.
Yeah,
Sorry,
exactly. I mean, I remember them playing Party at Ground Zero and stuff like that, and like, so, it was like I'd never like I'm sure that I had never like listened to an album or whatever, but like when they play that, I'm like, oh yeah, I know this one. There's like a few songs that I knew that one. But that's really I mean, the vibe I got at the time was like, we're having fun, we're in college, but this is all happening on the downslide. Like it was clear that this was a like post peak situation was the vibe I was getting, only because they were there. Like, right. Like, I'm like, if you guys were like, if the career was continuing to rock it up, you would not be like playing at 4:00 on a Saturday afternoon for like
College
me and
kids.
100 other
For basically free,
guys,
whatever.
you know what I mean? Like dudes. And so they were not like on the, I don't know who would be Rage Against the Machine at that time. You know what I mean? Like who were like blowing up the world. Like they weren't, it was clearly like, we weren't getting the Rages Against the Machine of, or even the Chili Peppers or whatever. Like we were in LA. We can get these guys for whatever the, student, whatever budget allowed. And so that was really my like last time that they even crossed my mind, I have to say, if I'm being honest, until this documentary was proposed. And so that's my experience with Fishbone. Now, Dallas, you're gonna come at us. You are the Fishbone expert. You're gonna bring it. So let's hear it.
Okay.
When did the Fishbone first enter your life?
This is the first time. I've literally never heard of them.
Okay.
We were just throwing out doc titles. No. Oddly enough, Fishbone entered my life probably about the same time, probably 98, maybe even 99. I was in like a punk ska band. And at some point, just somebody started playing Fishbone. And it became like, oh, Fishbone is amazing. Like it just was all of a sudden in my life, like nonstop. Like it's kind of how I go with any band, like NoFX, and that's how I got. Like somebody played, what was it, Ribbed for the first time for me for NoFX, and it was just like I was all NoFX all the time. So, like it's how I go with bands. And somebody played, I don't even think it was Party at Ground Zero. I think it was the song Housework off Reality My Surroundings. And I was like, this is the most insane, cool song I've ever heard. It's not a ska song. It is a ska song. It might be a punk song, but it also could be like a funk and maybe a marching band song. Like it was just insanity. And then I was told that they were black, which in the late 90s, if you were a white kid who liked ska, I mean, all you wanted to be was black. So like that was like the ultimate. Like, what are you talking about? Black people can't play punk. Like, because up to that point, all you heard was Living Colour. And I could give two shits about Living Colour. So like I was
It's a different thing.
It's a bad thing is what it is. But I was very excited.
Stipulated.
About Fishbone. And then they came and played Buffalo Joe's downtown San Diego, which isn't there anymore. And it was like this tiny little crap bar in downtown San Diego. And there was and I wasn't 21 yet when they played. So this had to be like 99. And we went, and there was like the whole side of the bar was all windows. So we all went and stood outside and watched the band from outside. And it was the best thing I've ever seen on stage. Like when it comes to bands and energy and fun and insanity, it was just so utterly inspiring to watch that. I couldn't believe it. Like it just didn't make sense. Like I'd been watching punk bands for so long and ska bands. Like I mean, ska bands have fun. You know, Less Than Jake was always fun to watch. Boss Tones, Real Big Fish, always fun to watch. Aquabats, one of the greatest live shows you'll ever see as well. But like Fishbone, man, like it was just like just somebody just wound up a toy and let it go. Not just Angelo. They were all going insane. Like at one point, Angelo literally jumped up, grabbed the ceiling, like a bar on the ceiling, and half the ceiling came down. and they just kept playing. Nobody stopped. They just kept going. Like it was the coolest experience ever. And then from that point on, it was like, okay, well, it's all Fishbone from here. And luckily they had like this incredibly rich, amazing catalog already that people were like, so it's like, I had so much to catch up on and so much to take in. And it was just the band we were in at the time was a ska punk band. After that, we tried to do everything like Fishbone, and we failed miserably because we were white. And it's just as simple as that. And then when we stopped that band and we started Bad Credit, like literally the whole point of Bad Credit wasn't to be like Fishbone, but it was to be as fun as that. Like we wanted to give crowds an experience where you knew we were having fun. There is no second guessing that we are going to get up there and be as insane as we possibly can be. And you might have a terrible time because you're not used to people just going up and not giving a shit. Like this show is about a big party that we're all having. And if you don't want to have a party, then get out because we're not going to break down to a sad song at any point. Like this is the fun part. And that was like it. That was all we wanted to do from that point on.
So how many times did you see them live after that? After when you watched them from the sidewalk?
So the documentary is interesting. And I went to the premiere of the documentary in Hollywood with the band and stuff like that.
Nice.
I saw Fishbone. I've seen Fishbone probably about 15 times in various ways and formations and lineups.
Yeah.
The last time we went and saw them was at Cain's. Bad Credit actually got to open for Fishbone at kind of this weird festival thing in downtown San Diego. And they were fine. They weren't great that night. They didn't, they had a weird lineup. It wasn't great. We went and partied with them afterwards at Croce's, which was insane and very fun. But then we went and saw maybe like a year and a half later, they had just released that album that they talk about on the documentary, Still Stuck in Your Throat. And the music they've been releasing and stuff wasn't great. Like it was all pretty meh. And that album is like pretty okay. And we went and saw them at Cain's and it was so bad. Like the lineup that they had was just, who are these people? It was like some kid, like some 10-year-old kid or something was playing keyboards. Their harmonies sounded terrible. They just sounded awful. And it was like 80 people there at Cain's. And maybe 4 songs in, Matt Gorney, who was in Bad Credit with me, literally turned to me and said, "We need to leave." And I was like, "What's up?" And he's like, "I need to remember them like they were." Yeah. And we left. And that was the last time I saw Fishbone. And that was 2007, maybe.
Wow. And then Cain's burned down. That's how bad.
And then Cain's burned down. Yeah, that's what they had to remove the stink of that show by burning Cain's to the ground.
And yet, that's 15 or whatever years ago, and they're still playing. So
they're still playing.
Maybe they're tearing it up.
No, here's the thing. They just released. I mean, I don't know how much you want to get into the doc, but we'll
eventually get there.
I'm sorry. They just really. I know I ramble. They just released an album in May that was produced by Fat Mike from NoFX. NoFX like appears on one of the songs. Yeah. It's an EP. I didn't even know that it came out. That's how disconnected I have been from Fishbone. But because we watched this doc, I was like, oh man, I need to see who's in the band again. Because I had heard like some of the original members came back. So I was like, oh, I want to go look and see who's in the band. And Chris Dowd was in the band again. And then I read an interview with him about the new EP. I was like, the new EP? And then I went and looked at it. And it's fucking great.
Yeah, I listened to that too. And I was like, this is good. Like,
it's great.
I didn't know. I didn't know any of the anything that happened in the movie. Basically, I didn't know. Like everything from like there's a band called Fishbone until like where they are now was new to me. And so like when I started, I was like listening through their catalog before I watched the movie, and I was like, well, okay, starting point. They're still making good music, and so it was like such a twist in the middle to be like, this 15-year sort of like desert walk that they did before they started doing interesting stuff again, apparently, you know?
Well, it's, I mean, like the doc kind of shows you, and it was really cool to see the doc again after the last time I saw it was at the premiere. So it was cool to watch it again. And if they have a producer, which on this EP, Fat Mike was their producer, if they have a producer that's not the band,
yeah,
they usually do good stuff.
Right.
And it's like, when I heard that Fat Mike produced this thing, when I read that last night, I was like, are you kidding me? And I just immediately like jumped in. I probably listened to it 4 or 5 times between last night and today. And every song's great. Chris Dowd writes songs on it, which he's one of the best songwriters in the band. And it sounds great. Like, it sounds good. It sounds produced. It sounds like somebody put any kind of money into it. Like, and when somebody gives them that, they will explode and make something great. But it's all that stuff in the middle. Like you said, that 15-year desert where they're just trying to like be in somebody's room on a 4-track or something. And it's like, it's off. And the whole Dr. Mad Vibe part of the documentary, like, I can 100% second that. Like, it is the worst part about Fishbone.
You're with Norwood on that.
Oh my God, Norwood,
like,
Dirty
I don't
Walt
want to be. He's like, I don't want to be in a band with Dr. Mad Vibe, and I keep being stuck in a band with Dr.
Wait,
Mad
I'm trying
Vibe.
to remember who is the guy. Who is the character Muggs from Cypress Hill would do? The pot doctor guy. Oh God, now I'm trying to remember. I feel like we should just like get these guys together, Dr. Mad Vibe and Dr. Green. Dr. Green.
I
Dr.
bet
Green
they
Thumb.
have been together. I'm going to say that they've been together and toured together.
It's probably already happened. Okay.
Dr. Mad Vibe just played San Diego like
and they
2 months
played
ago
the observatory in like May, I think.
And
all
it's
right,
the worst.
so
it is the worst.
Let's dive into this documentary.
Let's do it.
Okay. So basically I would say this is a kind of documentary where you're going back and forth. Basically, you've got the present day. The film comes out in 2010, so it's basically like the mid 2000s ish version of the guys all talking and telling you what's going on in their lives now, interspersed with footage from the whole history of the band and the kind of core members, and a lot about how they met in high school or junior high with like kind of Fat Albert style cartoon footage, which is quite charming. I like that part a lot.
Yeah.
Some music, but it doesn't. This is not a movie that has a lot of music. It's not like the kind of movie that we sometimes watch where like, the movie will pause and then you get 3 minutes of them playing a whole song. It's like little clips. So more narrative and
narrated by Laurence Fishburne.
Right.
Yes.
Fishburne, Fishbone. It's all happening.
Laurence Fishbone.
I have to assume that it's on purpose that they did that. I have to assume.
Yeah. It's and he's great.
Uncommented upon.
He really, I mean,
no one ever delivers that joke in the movie. It's just
it is.
Yeah,
It's
left on the table.
It's just sitting there. Although really, if you really break it down, I think he says like 4 sentences.
Yeah, there is a moment where he just stops narrating.
Yeah, they got like
movie.
fish in the booth for 15 minutes, and that's what they got. And that's the narration of the movie, and it's fine. But it's worth it. It works. Yeah, I mean, for people who are now a half hour into this and are not familiar with Fishbone, they're a band from Los Angeles of African American people. The kind of core guys met in basically junior high. The movie gets into how like busing is what brought these guys from different parts of the LA area to this particular junior high in the Valley, which is an interesting kind of historical piece. And
I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for this sort of confluence of like, here's how this esoteric part of public policy explains the result of this pop culture thing, where they're like, it was busing from, people from the South who were displaced to LA for the war economy, and then the civil rights movement created
migration.
Created the necessity for busing, and that brought kids to like the punk capital of white LA from Compton. And it was just like, I'm like, yeah, I don't, whether a historian would check that all of these things are the things that combined to make this happen, I don't care. It's a tidy narrative. Like I'm there with it.
I feel like it could have stopped right there for you and you would have been happy. Just
it's like in Dogtown and Z-Boys when they talk about, they're like, there was a drought in 1976 and that is why these guys created vert skating. It's like, all right, well,
They
maybe.
also they invented polyurethane, which was how they made the wheel.
Yeah.
It's like those kind of things.
Yeah.
That
love
does
it.
really stick out when you watch the documentary. Those little nuggets.
Dude, I'm
It
so
makes you feel like you
I'm
know
so
something.
charitable to those things. If somebody was telling me that, I'd be like, this fucking blowhard. But like you said it to some sort of narrative, and I'm like, this is
Well, Laurence
great film
Fishburne said
milking.
it. If Laurence
Yeah,
Fishburne
exactly.
says it,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, with
true.
Laurence Fishburne over Fat Albert style animation, you could pretty much tell me anything and I would buy it.
Right.
Pizzagate, okay, I'm in. Whatever you say, Fish.
Oh man.
So basically it's, to some extent it's a kind of conventional narrative in the sense of like, this is not a for all the like weirdness of the band, it still basically is a movie that's going to tell you the life story of this band and their arc. And so like I guess just coming at it from different kind of perspectives, like I guess Dallas, like what did you think about it when you first saw it, and what was your kind of take on the movie?
As with anything with Fishbone, being a big Fishbone fan, I'm still a big Fishbone fan. Anytime someone puts any effort into talking about this band, I like it. If that makes any sense, like
Yes,
there
that's
was
like
a
very common theme of this this
Like,
podcast.
I like this thing, and I needed more stuff about the thing. And
well,
here
it was
came,
it was a well produced, documentary about a band that deserves a well produced documentary. So I just outright enjoyed it from the get go because, like you said, there was animation. It was like somebody tried to do something, and that was special to me for a band that I feel like probably mostly caused their own problems, but also doesn't seem to get a lot of breaks. And it was just nice to see that somebody gave them a chance to have their story told. I don't think that I personally have a lot of problems with the documentary, mainly the busing issues, but I have a lot of problems.
You're opposed to racial integration.
Yeah, it was a
big
problem for me. Big problem. No, but I like there's certain aspects of the documentary that I'm like, because like you said, it to me, it's very uneven, where it's like, it starts with this retelling or, telling of their story. And then it gets to a point where it's like, it's just Angelo and Norwood having relationship problems. Yeah. And Laurence Fishburne stops narrating. It's like the whole thing kind of loses its way a little bit. And I'm like, I don't care about any of this. What I would like to know is more about making the albums that you guys made that were really great. Like, I'd love to know more about that. Like songwriting, any of that. They really don't get into it.
The like meat of their career, and particularly like the album production gets like, I don't know, what, 10 minutes. It's like, like we like sprint through the like, and they're making albums that all of these famous musicians we've assembled say are as influential as any albums that came out in that period. We barely talk about that.
Yeah, just so you know, this album changed the face of rock and roll. But Norwood is sad, and it's like, wait, what the reality? Like, if you're listening to this, they don't even talk about the reality of My Surroundings, the album, which is that's the album that changed everything for them. I mean, Truth and Soul, their first like main album is insane. Their first EP is so great. Party at Ground Zero, all that stuff. That laid the groundwork. But like, if you go and listen to Reality of My Surroundings, like that album is a masterpiece of whatever their genre was. But it's like a masterpiece of late 80s, early 90s, punk, rock, ska, like just every track. And it sounds beautiful. Like, and the fact that they don't even say the name of it, I think, is like mind blowing. And like, and watching it this time, I'm like, maybe they didn't have the rights. Like maybe they couldn't legally say it. Like it was just such a weird, like even the album that they were working on when Kendall leaves the band, Give a Monkey a Brain, you don't even say it. They never say the title of the album. It's like, do they not want people to go listen to these albums? Like it's so confusing to me.
All right. So I did want to say that like, you alluded to one of the more classic tropes of the rock doc genre is opening with a bunch of famous people who are not going to really appear or rarely will appear in the movie. But this is just setting you up for like, This is why you should not click off this in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So you
yeah,
get.
yeah.
I'm going to run down this murderer's row. You get Keith Morris from the
Hold on,
Circle Jerks.
before you jump
Go
in,
ahead,
let me just say that like when I was like dialing it up, I had in my head a list of people I hoped were going to be here, and one of them absolutely was, to the point
Okay.
that I was like, yeah, like I actually like did a fist bump. So
Oh,
I
wow.
don't know
wanna-
if you guys,
can I-
if you could, yeah, I would like to hear if you guys could guess who.
Well,
who-
go through the list, and then I'm going to
Yeah.
guess what you.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. So the list that I have, and I might be missing some, is Keith Morris from Circle Jerks, Mike Watt, Ice-T, Tim Robbins, of course, Branford Marsalis, Gwen Stefani, Flea, and Les Claypool. So let me guess. Dallas, who do
Well,
you think?
you're
is
also
up-
missing Tony Canal.
Oh, right. Yeah, Tony.
Canal.
From
is
No
he up
Doubt.
front? Okay, I don't remember if he's
Yeah.
like.
Oh
He
yeah,
comes
he's
in
not up
later.
front. Oh, you're talking
He
about
shows
up
up
front.
in-
I apologize. Okay,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
but who do you?
Branford
who are you-
Marsalis. You're missing Branford Marsalis.
I
He
said
was
Branford
up front.
Marsalis.
Oh, you did?
So
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So who do you think? And do you think Andy was waiting for Branford Marsalis? Is that what he was waiting? Or
I
Tim
don't
Robbins?
know.
Who was it?
I don't know.
I'm guessing it was Flea. I'm guessing Flea.
No,
Really? I'm going to guess it was Gwen Stefani.
Ice-T?
no, neither. It was Les Claypool.
Oh, Les Claypool. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Are you a Primus fan?
I am, and
Okay.
I an Oysterhead as well, and Flying Frog Brigade.
You could have just had the
Um,
Primus, but that's all right.
Sorry, Flying Frog Brigade was great. Or saw them earlier this year.
They are great, actually. You're great.
But I think Les Claypool, like the way he plays bass, I like hear it when I listen to Fishbone. Like,
Right,
like
right.
it's very self evident to me that they were influential to him.
Well, that's the crazy part about that too, is that they literally say that at the
Yeah.
end of the documentary.
Yes.
That how unbelievably good Norwood is at bass, and how much he basically like inspired the way people played bass in ska music from that moment forward. Like, it is insane that they don't talk about it. It's also insane, sorry to jump in here, that they never really talk about Fish, their drummer.
Right. He
Barely. Yeah.
He's one of the greatest drummers that has ever lived. He is known as one of the best session drummers available to anybody. He was the drummer for Justin Timberlake's band for years when he quit Fishbone. He is unbelievably good, and they never ever talk about it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like,
So
what's
okay, well, this is the thing, though, Dallas.
until
This
the
is
very
like- this is a common thing. Okay, go ahead, Andy.
Well, I was just saying until the very, very end of the movie, when they start mentioning that Norwood was an influential bassist, you would have guessed that he's basically just the band leader. He was the guy that had the house that they practiced at when they were a kid, and he, was friendly with everyone and kept them organized. Like,
Yeah.
if you were just to rely on this movie up until the last like 20 minutes, you would think that was his primary influence on
like
the band.
he can't quit because he won't be able to play with anybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but this is a classic thing that we get into with these documentaries, where you have a not necessarily like hugely well-known band or people, like where the movie is made ideally for people, not just for the hardcore fans, right? So the filmmakers are running this thing of like, again, this is perceiving from the outside, but it seems like we always run into this thing where it's like, if you're really into this band or this style, whatever, you're going to want the nitty gritty.
Mhm.
And if you're not necessarily into the band, the filmmakers don't necessarily trust that you're going to care about that. So it becomes more about the relationships and, can that carry the movie? Right. Because like, there's a lot of documentaries where that happens, where it's like, well, I really, either you do something like super raw, like we just did an episode about this like X documentary. And it's like, it's really was not meant for a mass audience. It's just like, if you're interested in X, great. Here's a lot of it. And it's great. Or you're doing something like this that, or like the Anvil documentary where they basically tried to hide their music almost, you know what I mean? And I'm sure if you're like way into Anvil or you're way into Fishbone, you want more of that. Whereas for me, like, I don't know that much about him. So, I didn't know what I was missing. And,
but I would have rather you got more information about that than the fact that Norwood hates the theremin. Like,
Right.
which
Yeah,
is
no,
a
I
fair
agree.
point. It's a
I
fair
agree.
point, and most fans agree with him. But it is like, who cares about that? It would have been like, again, I just go back to the fact that they didn't even talk about albums. Like the album that came out in 2000, no mention of it whatsoever anywhere. I'm like, that changed the course of everything for them. Like, it's just mind blowing.
So I don't know where you could have, if you hadn't been at the premiere, where all somebody would have seen this movie. But I had a hint that we were going to go down this road at the title screen when I saw that this was in part produced through a California Humanities Council grant. And I was like, oh, this was directed to appear at the local public radio stations, TV broadcast. And like that whole like, well, let's talk less about the album creation and more about like the human relationship is very like,
yeah, that's a fair
public
point.
radio,
Yeah, that's very true. It's just like, it's interesting to me that like there is a, because it doesn't necessarily celebrate the band.
No.
And like, that's the big bummer to me, is it like you're just talking about, like that totally makes sense that they would go down that more relationship driven path. But it's just like, it's such a disservice to all that they accomplished, because then we're just left going like, oh, they're broke and they live in shitty apartments.
Yeah.
Or with their parents. And you're like, oh.
I mean, I feel like I did not expect to watch a documentary about the band Fishbone, about which I knew very little, but I'd seen them and I had a passing familiarity, and find it to be a huge bummer.
It was it is.
I mean, this is
a
a downer of a movie. I mean, it just, it's like the footage of them in their youth, particularly like playing, in the 80s and, early 90s in their whatever prime, whatever you want to call it. I mean, maybe people think they were in their prime later. I don't know. But like in terms of like, maybe kind of on the arc of, going for it commercially and whatever, is awesome. Like you can tell why they were clearly like just this unbelievably great live band, and the energy in the room, as people were like, just experiencing something they'd never seen before. And, you can see how like no band wanted to, follow them, and all that kind of stuff like is so exciting and awesome. And, I'm like, boy, if I could have seen Fishbone in like 1991 or whatever in some club in LA, like that would have been the greatest thing, like I would still be talking about it to this day. But yeah, I mean, the bulk of the movie is this just kind of bummer situation of like, getting kicked out of an apartment because can't pay the rent, and playing a shitty tour, and not really selling a lot of tickets, and whatever, and it's just like, I mean, I guess that's the reality of it, but it's also like it doesn't have an arc. It does like I was hoping that there was going to be I mean, look, it's a documentary; they're not going to make it up. But I was hoping, not knowing the story, that it was going to end with like everybody reunites and they had a show and it's like things are going well or something. Like I wanted. It's like they had this movie, but they didn't have an end, I feel like. And that, I don't know. I'm struggling with this one.
So I have similar perspective, but I think maybe I liked the bummer part of it better than you did, certainly, David. That part caught me off guard. I did not see that coming. The reason I didn't see it coming is because it's a fun time. It goes from a very fun hang to a very tough hang at like 40 minutes into the movie, right?
Yeah.
The first 40 minutes are like going to a Fishbone show. It's a party. You've got really interesting people talking about this really interesting band. The guys are so charismatic. They're all very like funny and interesting, and you want to hear more from them. But the reason it caught me so off guard is because I just know from the last few years that they are still touring at relatively large venues, which I know now is like a new thing. But as I'm watching the stuff in 1990, I'm like, the good news here is there's no rough spots coming, because I know that by 2020, they're still playing together at the Observatory in San Diego. And then it's like, actually, no, there's a really horrible middle section where like a dude joins a cult and they get arrested for kidnapping because they tried to like, take him back from the cult, like that whole middle section, like really caught me off guard. And so I was kind of transfixed by it. It goes on too long and eventually devolves into just Angelo and Norwood's like relationship problems, and that stuff's less interesting. But initially the tough, the sad part just had me thinking about how shitty the music industry is, that a band as like successful and beloved as Fishbone could so quickly result in people living like basically hand to mouth,
Well, I mean, here's the thing, and this is a weird connection to make, but Bad Credit And we talk about this. I talk about this on my album in the story because it's very true, and it's the difficult part to explain to people. Is like we were handed a lot of opportunities, and our instinct was to always just tell people to F off. Like we didn't really care about doing it. We thought it was a big joke and stupid. And so when people started to believe in it, you're just like, what are we doing here? And nobody really told us this is the way you're supposed to do it. I feel like Fishbone, and they even say it at some points in the documentary, had a very similar way of doing business where it's like, we're going to do the Fishbone thing. And when people were like, well, you should try to do this thing, they were like, nope. And then all the other bands that did do that thing, like the Chili Peppers and No Doubt and all those other bands, are amazingly rich and famous. And Fishbone's like, well, we still got our pride. And you're like, do you? You live with your mom. Like you don't, I don't know if you have your pride. Like you can say that you did it your way, but your way has clearly not been nice to you. So I do think that there is like a big, huge part of this that is the music industry, just using them, and when it became too difficult, tossing them aside. But there's also a huge piece of this that's Fishbone just completely letting that happen and not knowing what to do. And to their credit, like they say several times too, they were signed at like 18 years old. They got signed at Columbia at like 18. What do they know? What do they know how to do anything? Like you can't blame them. And so they got chewed up and spit out, and then they made every wrong decision that any of them could make.
Right. I mean, I feel like, they're showing their music from like the early 90s, and I don't know the sequence of albums and songs, so I'm not going to, but.
Well, the first album came out.
Okay,
I'm
so
just kidding. Go
the impression I got was that they're putting this music out, and it seems like, and I kind of remember this from the time, like, it seems like the sound is a little dated at the time, meaning like this is the time when the Chili Peppers are working with Rick Rubin, who was like the cool new guy. And, of course you've got Butch Vig and these kinds of producers out there. And they were like, the sound was changing from this like polished LA metallic sheen of, a Living Color type of band or something like that, sound into, what would eventually become kind of grunge and 90s alternative, whatever. And it's not that anything's better or worse, but that, they weren't like savvy enough in terms of production to know to make a turn and to go in a different direction. They were just kind of doing their thing. And so that's kind of like, you could say like the music industry didn't accept them or whatever, but like also like they tried to like play the game. They did that, Everyday Sunshine, like video, like clearly that was an attempt to do what the industry told them to do. You know what I mean? Like they're all dressed up in these like sunshiny uniforms and kind of going for maybe like an Arrested Development kind of vibe or something like that,
Yeah, I think it was the same year actually.
Yeah, and this kind of like that was the era of like where like De La Soul and Native Tongues and all that kind of stuff was happening, and maybe they're trying to tie it into that. I'm not really sure, but it seemed like they just were not savvy enough to understand musical trends. And that could be the music industry, or that could be bad management, or it could be just them wanting to chart their own path, which is fine. But that also means that you're not going to necessarily get to the promised land financially. So I don't know. I'm not really sure where that lands.
I mean, I think there's also, it could be a hefty dose of just what they did on stage was very difficult to translate into the studio. Like regardless of who was in the room or how savvy they were about trends, it's possible it was just a tough nut to crack. How do we take this incredible thing that we do and give it to people, over an album?
Let me speak to that.
Yeah,
for a second,
please. Take the floor.
Well, because back I had the same problem. All of our energy would always go into our live show because that's what we cared about the most. And we had literally Joe Escalante, who ran Nitro Records for a while, loved us and literally told us, I love it. How do we record it? And I'm like, well, we have these recordings. And he's like, and I'm like, okay, note taken. Which we just kind of then did. We kind of just did like live albums and figured that would be the thing that would work, but whatever. So the problem there is one I understand. However, Reality of My Surroundings and Give a Monkey a Brain and even Truth and Soul sound so good that like this narrative that they kind of put in the doc and that a lot of people talk about is that they couldn't capture them on an album. Like,
I'm not saying that even.
No, I'm just saying like but that is something that people talk about. Like they couldn't take what they did live and put it on an album. And I'm like, dude, I don't care. Reality is in those albums. They sound perfect. The production is beautiful. And the songs are half of the records are just catchy as hell. Like they were able to do something in the studio that was different than live, but it was still really, really good. I think the problem with the band, and what you did allude to, David, I think, and you can tell me I'm wrong, but is that they did have this democracy, which they talk about, where everybody kind of got to have a say, and 4 people in the band wrote different types of music. And that's why they were so eclectic and different and weird, and every album had all these different songs. And I think that that was the thing that made them so interesting and different and fun, and also was the thing that completely stopped them at a point. Because if you listen to Everyday Sunshine, you'd be like, that song's great. And then you won't hear another song like it on the album. That's the only one.
Yeah,
right.
So it's like, what do you do with that? I don't think there was an opportunity for them to become huge. I think they were always destined to be an observatory type band.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's the, I mean, that's the, and I don't, I don't mean to offend you with this comparison, but at the same time this is happening, there's I'm not drawing a comparison by sound or anything, but there are other bands around this time who are realizing.
Give me an example.
Who are realizing that there's a lot of money to be made by being successful on the road and not worrying so much about studio albums. And, that could have been them too.
One of them sounds a lot like Fishbone. The name is quite similar. Even the drummer almost has the same name.
With just like, yes, exactly.
Well, who are you talking about?
Fish.
Oh God. Okay.
I mean, but like, set aside what you think about them.
Are you talking about the ice cream, fish food?
Yeah,
super good.
Set aside how you feel about them.
Talk about Laurence Fishburne. Why can't Laurence Fishburne narrate a fish documentary? Andy, make it happen.
They're simultaneous, and they found the business model, and like, the business model was potentially there. It doesn't necessarily have to result in all the other shit that goes along with that other band. But
I love that you refuse to say their name. It's so funny.
Well, because I don't want to distract from the point that like it was possible at this moment.
More distracting that you won't say their name.
Yeah.
You're making a good point.
Yes.
Now all anybody's going to think about is what the hell is Banny's talking about?
Yeah,
okay.
I'm talking only about widespread panic and their ability to.
I hear what you're saying. There is a path that now, in retrospect, a band that is primarily known as a live act that never made it as a big recording artist type act is able to chart. And from the perspective of 2023, you can look at it and go, aha, there you go. I mean, there's probably a million examples of bands like that are not necessarily in the jam band scene, but are like very popular live artists who like constantly draw, and like nobody, like Trombone Shorty. I don't know. Is he like a big recording artist? I don't know that I've ever heard a record, but like
Robert Randolph.
He played, he's and so it's not necessarily a racial thing. It's not whatever, you know what I mean? Like it's in any genre, in any whatever, some people are able to chart that path of a very successful career as a touring, act, whether or not the records translate. And why one band can do that and why one can't, I don't know. To be able to get the holy grail of like being in 1989 an unbelievable LA live act, and then also learn how to make records in a way that translates like the Chili Peppers or Jane's Addiction or whoever, that's a whole nother like, grand slam that not everybody's going to hit. And that's understandable.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think there was, and Nora even says it in the doc, where it's like, we could have done the festival thing and played the hits and been that band, and we chose not to do that and keep doing original and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, you can do both. Like bands do both all of the time. Like, I mean, Fish, you bring up, sorry, I said their name. You brought up Fish, but they I'm sure they play a ton of festivals all the time. And then they also do their own shows. And then they also put out music from time to time when they feel necessary. And it's like they have that rotating thing of like, this is who we are and this is what we do. The Grateful Dead did the same thing. Like, this is who we are, this is what we do. And it is very strange that I think to be fair, I think the big thing that happened to Fishbone is like just they broke up without breaking up. Yeah. I mean, everybody left. Like, I mean, the person in the band that I absolutely hate the most and still do is Dirty Walt. And there's a point where he's like, I had it. And as a fan, I'm like, if the most useless part of this band has left, then I think that you can definitely.
Dirty Walt spends an uncomfortably long amount of time describing his fantasies about what he wanted to do to Angelo to hurt him.
Dude.
It's just I'm like, could somebody cut this tape? After the first violent assault he wanted to commit, he just keeps listing them.
Well, then they show them in a rehearsal and he's like laying into Angelo and everybody's just like laughing. And I'm like, this doesn't seem funny.
No,
like, I don't know, like, maybe this is
very serious. He seems very serious about it. Yeah.
It's weird too, because looking them up, I was like, last night I was doing a lot of Googling because I'm like, okay, is Kendall back in the band? Like, who's back in the band? And a lot of them came back for like a couple of years and then left again.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's so weird. Like, even Dirty Walt came back for a few years and then he's gone again.
Right.
And it's like, why did they come back? And then why do they leave? Like, it's such a weird, there's this weird dynamic. And to me, it's also like this thing where like, again, it goes back. I think for me, like watching the documentary again, knowing the band, it really does come back to them being 19 and 18, 17, 18, 19. Because maybe they didn't really want to hang out together after a while. I mean, like, you look at the Beatles, like, not to compare the two bands, but the Beatles were together for how long? Like, they were kids and then they weren't kids anymore. And they're like, hey, we should be adults now. And maybe this isn't what we want to do anymore.
Yeah. I mean, that's honestly the miracle of any band lasting for any amount of time is like, you happen to like pick up instruments with a few guys who are like in your life only by proximity. They're just also at your school and have instruments.
Busing.
or busing in this case. And then it's like, okay, well, now we are married for 30 years. We have to continue to tie our lives around each other. It's amazing that any band has ever stayed together.
I don't know if you guys are Ben Folds or Ben Folds 5 fans, but I just listened to Ben Folds' book, his autobiography, and I'd always wondered why they broke up. And that's literally why they broke up. Really? And he talks about it, is that they were kind of found each other because friend recommended, oh, go get this guy Darren to play drums. This guy Robert from another band should play bass. And he's like, and then after a few years, we realized like we weren't really ever friends. And we didn't really like each other very much. And why would we want to keep doing this if we didn't really like each other? Like, that's the most normal reason.
You're right. That's
ever. Right. But it's like, I feel like you just said, I think we don't think about that enough because we look at it going, they're huge.
Yeah.
Why would they ever walk away from that? It's like, well, maybe you don't like that guy. And clearly they didn't really like each other very much. But then, after a while, and I don't even know if they like each other now. Like, as to your point earlier, David, like, there's no button at the end of this. Like, there's no like happy ending. It's like, do they like each other? Do they want to be around each other? Like, it's so confusing.
There's like a little moment that maybe honestly should have been where they ended it. Maybe it seemed too grim, but when Kendall shows up at their show in Berkeley and they hang out with him,
after
Norwood
says something like 15 years or whatever.
Yeah, Norwood says something I really like, where he talks about hanging out with Kendall backstage and just giving him a hug and setting aside the past for a second, and he says, "Man, I am glad I made it to the future." And I just think that's such like a beautiful quote and a perspective. And then he says something a little bit later, I think when he's trying to talk Chris into joining the band again, and he says like, "Look, all this stuff happened, but we have an opportunity to make life as good as we can make it from here to the finish line." And like, I think he just has like a really sweet way of looking at like, whatever the hell happened or for what reason we ended up in this band, but we created a living thing and we can keep it alive, and it can be a livelihood for us, and we can enjoy ourselves for like, the remaining blink of an eye we have on this planet.
It is a little bit like Lips and Rob from Anvil.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, it is.
Where they have their moment, and then you just get this documentary of like, this long struggle, and it's, there's a little bit of delusion there, but it's also like, we talked in that episode about like all of, Lips's inspiring quotes, and you know what I mean? Like, and that's just how he kept things going. But it is a like really good perspective. You know what I mean? For anybody in whatever situation they're in, they're like, hey, this didn't work out, or this didn't go the way we planned, or whatever, things went wrong. But like, let's make the best of whatever time we have left. You know what I mean? With like the people you care about, doing something you enjoy doing. And, and I mean, I don't think the films are comparable in terms of the quality of filmmaking. You know what I mean? Like, it just shows, I guess maybe that's a good little compare and contrast situation is,
they are similar now.
There's some similarities to the arc and the characters and the circumstances. And yet you can see the difference of like a phenomenal movie just based on some different choices. You know what I mean? As opposed to a movie that, like, that could be better. Like, just.
Well, I'm interested. I'm assuming that you're saying this one could have been better, and that you enjoyed the Anvil doc more.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I was just clarifying.
Yeah, no, I'm saying like I think the Anvil doc is a classic.
It's great. It's great.
And this one, it has great
saw that
moments.
with Nick McCann at the Landmark in Hillcrest.
There you go.
Yeah.
And this one is, it has some good stuff. And I mean, I like I came away liking the band more.
Me
just
too.
not knowing that much about them. But I just feel like they didn't get the documentary they deserve.
Yeah, I think I'll watch this documentary a handful more times. I'll probably not make it through the end, but like those first 40 minutes are so fun that that's fun. Sometimes that's enough.
Yeah, it was really fun to watch it again.
It's like Stripes.
I don't
exactly the same. Nailed it.
It is just like Stripes. And it's weird. John Larroquette also shows up in this documentary. I don't know if I'll watch it again anytime soon, but yeah, it is like, I'll say this. I remember at the premiere, it was packed. I forget what theater it was at, but it was packed. And it was really cool, again, to just see people celebrate the band.
Yeah.
Because the taste that was in my mouth was still that last Kane show where they were just fucking terrible. And I looked at this doc like, oh, they broke up finally. This is their kind of farewell.
Yeah.
And then, the doc ends with them still trying to push along. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. I saw that part. I saw the still trying to push part, and it's not good. And then when they were like, Kindle kind of came back and I was like, okay, all right, maybe this will happen again. But I haven't gone and seen them again. And what's crazy to me, they are still one of my top 5 favorite bands. Like, because just the enormity of their catalog, those first 5 albums are just so huge in my life, and so like such beautiful albums that like it made me sad to the point of I don't remember the last time that I listened to a lot of those albums. And so last night when I started listening to that new Fishbone EP, I was like, this is really, really good. And then today I was listening to Give a Monkey a Brain, and I was like, this is really, really good. Why? Like what? And then you go into like, what happened? And then I'm sad the documentary didn't answer that question because it just doesn't. Like you're really left going like, what happened? And you can only really go, Angelo is a crazy, insane person for real, like not a character. He is really insane. Nobody's helping him with that. He's just out there. And if you listen to like, it's interesting to listen to those first few albums. And then once the people in the band start leaving, you can tell who wrote what throughout their history, because like the album they put out after Kendall left and Chris Dowd left was called Chim Chim's Badass Revenge. And they talk about it a little bit in the album or the documentary. Dallas Austin produced it in Atlanta. it's a pretty good album. It's not great. It's pretty good. Very heavy metal because this guy John Bingham was playing guitar, who they never talk about in the documentary, but he was in the band for a long time and they never talk about him. But he took them in this real heavy, like grunge direction. And then their last few albums are like Norwood and Angelo doing these weird, and like the theremin and the Dr. Mad Vibe thing really honestly did crash the band into this weird pothead world that they never really climbed out of. Honestly, they went from being this punk, like Lumineers. I can't screw up the word.
The Lumineers. They're the Lumineers of punk.
The Lumineers of punk.
Everybody says that about Fishbone.
They're like these godfathers of ska punk and ska core and all this music. And they were just no doubt Red Hot Chili Peppers. And then at some point they just took a turn and they became like, Sublime with Rome.
Yeah.
It's
So, I mean, I'm curious, setting yourself aside, like, what is the reputation of this band in that community? Meaning, like, I get that they, in some sense, don't fit neatly into a genre of ska or punk or whatever. But I feel like when I hear, and I'm not from either of those communities, like, that's a party I was not attending or invited to or whatever. So I don't know. Who can tell at this late date? But we're not here to litigate that. But when I hear people talking about like, the different waves of ska or whatever, and I'm checking it out, like I just feel like I don't hear about this band that much. And maybe because it's like, well, they fell into the punks, we're not gonna talk about them. Maybe or maybe it's one of those kind of situations. But I feel like they've I don't know what they're, but maybe I'm not deep enough into it to know that they are considered the funkadelic of this genre or something. I don't know.
Well, I think that is the problem. That is the overarching problem with Fishbone, is that everyone who saw them loved them. Everybody wanted to be the one to make them famous. But the big hiccup was, what do you do with them? Who are they? What are they? And I think that is the problem. I think they're most, from how I found them, was ska and ska punk, like Op Ivy and Less Than Jake, the Boss Tones. Like there was this world that was like we just kept discovering the other one and going back further and further, and that's how I found Fishbone. So, and I think most people equate them to being like a ska band because their most popular song is Party at Ground Zero. So, it's kind of the case. Like, I'll say this to you, the band Madness.
Sure.
I don't think that they're a ska band. However, their second most popular song is a ska song. But I would tell you, listen to House of Fun and tell me this is a ska band, and there's no way that you would agree with that. Like, it's just like they're just, so it's like, how do you define? But I'm not trying to compare the two bands. I'm just saying, like, their most popular stuff is ska stuff, but I would never really call Fishbone a ska band. They came up with this weird name for themselves called Nutmeg. And there was like other bands that were Nutmeg bands. There's a band called Weapon of Choice, which is like super insane good band, like crazy talented funk rock band. Like if Fish was black, let's say that. That's what Weapon of Choice is. Like, just I'm serious, like a jam
Andy's
band.
very offended right now.
I'm writing this down,
dude. Andy, I'm not kidding. You might really dig this band. Full on jam band. Heavy guitars, crazy melodies, but funk and super good. They were a Nutmeg band. There was just this weird thing called Nutmeg, and again, probably inspired by Dr. Mad Vibe and the theremin, and really made it all suck.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like are there people out there discovering Fishbone? There must be, right? Like, I just feel like I don't know, but that they're getting a revival every so often. Like that another group comes along and discovers their old albums. Like there's a million bands that are, well known and respected now that like never really made it, never had big hits, but like they keep popping up. You know what I mean? And I'm hoping that maybe Fishbone is one of them, and I'm just not hearing about it.
Well, it's also all the bands that they influenced are now broken up or old. Like
they just toured with Parliament. Really?
Yeah, and what kid is be like, oh man, Parliament and Fishbone? Very few 14-year-olds are breaking the bank to go to that show. But like Red Hot Chili Peppers, like Red Hot Chili Peppers from time to time will still take Fishbone on the road with them. They've done it recently. I don't know how recently, to be honest, but every once in a while they'll do it. And that to me is like, that's their bands that they influence. But again, if you're a kid going to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, are you going to go buy some Fishbone albums after that? Like, who knows? Like it's just such a weird.
I mean, if 1% of the people that go to see the Chili Peppers in a stadium get turned on to Fishbone, like at that show, like that's a big bump for them.
It's not like, to be clear, whatever having your finger on the pulse of the youth of America is, I have the opposite of that. I do not know what it exactly is going on.
You and me both, dude.
Yeah, but from what I see, it doesn't seem that crazy to me that like I could read in the news tomorrow that like Fishbone is charting higher than they ever have before because one of their songs ended up on TikTok and became this like viral trend. Like
but that could be anybody, right?
That could be anyone, but I do think that like Fishbone's chaotic energy would lend itself to that fairly well, frankly.
I think their chaotic energy would lend itself well to social media.
Yeah.
And they are terrible at social media. They are one of the worst, just like any pothead though. Like,
yeah,
I don't mean to like harp on that, but it's like, there is a certain thing with potheads that they just, those kind of bands that that's not their thing.
Right.
And it's like, but Fishbone would be really well served by embracing it. And they don't know really how to do it.
I feel like if they went out on tour opening for like 100 Gex,
yes,
then like they would suddenly become popular or something. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because like that's very simpatico.
Give me like
very similar kind of flavor.
100 Gex Fishbone Ween tour.
Oh wow.
Wow. Or be quite an evening.
I will say Norwood says at one point, and like no one else comes this close to just outright saying this at any point in the movie. He just looks at the camera and he's like, I mean, I know Angelo's insane.
Yeah.
It's like the first time they're like, just to be, if we've been dancing around this with these long clips of him falling off his trampoline at home, what we're trying to tell you is that the lead singer of this band is a crazy person.
Yeah.
Like, and it's startling when he says it because you're like, oh, okay, I thought we were going to be really like ginger about this whole diagnosis, and then he just comes out and he's like, no, he's crazy. I get it.
Yeah. I mean, he's sweet. Like, he's not the kind of crazy where he's like he just comes off like a really sweet, like sincere guy, but he's just not gonna fit into like whatever box. And somehow rock and roll, or whatever you want to call it, like somehow finds those guys that are like that, but just enough to be able to like comply, like like an Anthony Kiedis or a Steven Tyler or whoever, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then other people just can't quite make it, even George Clinton was able to like somehow, but Sly Stone wasn't able to keep it together. He's maybe more of a Sly Stone type. I don't know.
I think that's actually a pretty good comparison. I mean, even in like the style that they look like and wear and stuff like that. I think that is a really good comparison.
It is especially also because like, if you think about, it's not that many years from Sly that this was happening and everyone's like, what is going on? How are black people playing this music? It's like, what?
Well, yeah,
black people just were playing this music not so long ago. Like, and before that, it was all black music.
Yeah.
The only people who ever thought to ever play anything like this was black people.
Yeah.
Really a recent thing that white people started playing it in 1979.
It's been like 8 years by 1979 that white people had done this.
Yeah. Somehow the world keeps being surprised when somebody other than white people do something.
Yeah.
I don't know. As 3 white dudes, I think
we should be the ones to speak.
We're here to let our fellow white people listen up. White people who listen to us notice that other people are doing stuff. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. What else do we have to say about this film? Anything else? Are we missing anything?
I mean, I don't think
any
we
good
are.
bits. If we stripped all the meat off the bone.
I think I would encourage people to not watch it and instead go listen to the first 5 Fishbone albums. That's what I would, or the new EP that just came out. That's what I would encourage you to do.
Okay. I think those are good recommendations. I do, or just watch it for 40 minutes and then the
first 40 minutes,
like right when you start like getting the vibe that like oh wait, the lovable family dog in the film is limping right now for no reason, and the dad says, wait, why is that dog limping? Like, that's your cue. Get out.
Yeah,
Pull the eject.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a good advice too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's only $2.99 to rent on Prime.
Yeah,
so
$2.99.
it's a good deal.
So really 40 minutes, whatever.
Yeah.
It's definitely a type of thing where it's like, once you feel like, well, we're getting into the low part of the movie, I'm going to, maybe get a snack and just hang in there, and then it's going to all, come together. You're good. It's fine.
It does not come together. Yeah.
But Fishbone is still doing their thing. So God bless them.
Yeah.
I hope they tear it up.
I'm glad you watched it.
I hope Dallas, I hope you
even though-
somehow find the motivation, Dallas, to go see Fishbone
Yes.
one of these days and find it to be a fabulous, enjoyable experience and relive your youth. And, we all can just be the people we wanted to be when we were 23 or something. I don't know.
So inspiring. This is the kind of ending that the doc didn't have. It's inspiring.
I hope you go to a show and say, man, I'm glad I made it to the future.
I'm glad I made it to the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I will go see them again.
You can look at Fishbone and you can say to them, let's just enjoy what we can, and from here to the finish line. You can say that to them.
I will go see them again. I will. In fact, when I heard about that observatory show, I missed it, and I actually would have gone and seen them then. But if they come down again, I'll try to make it happen.
Next time they come through, I'm going to go see them.
It's just an appointment.
Do it.
I would totally go.
Get Nick.
Rock Docs Live.
Rock Docs Live at the Fishbone Show.
Dude, Nick would be like, ugh.
It'll be awesome. Let's do this. Let's make it happen. Okay. Well, Dallas, one more time. Plug the new record.
Yeah. DallasMcLaughlin.bandcamp.com is where you can pick up my new record. I Didn't Start the Fire and Other Lies. It's also on Apple Music too, if you have Apple Music. But if you go to Bandcamp and pay your $7, you will get a link to a secret album called Secrets, which has a bunch of songs from bands I've been in and stand-up clips and some other random stuff. So if you'd like, get it on Bandcamp, pay your $7, you get 2 albums. And also you can get on Apple Music and get the 1 album, or you can stream it if you have Apple Music and I get 10 cents. It's fantastic. But either way, thank you guys for having me, and thank you for talking Fishbone with me, because I like talking about Fishbone and it's been too long. My wife gets tired of me going, but Angelo, she hates that stuff.
It's fucking theremin.
You just don't understand it, honey. He's one of the best.
No, we appreciate you coming on. Maybe we'll have you on again one time to discuss a film we all enjoyed.
Next.
Who knows? But anyway, thanks for listening to Rock Dogs, folks. Check out troublezine.com. They're awesome, good people supporting independent music journalism. They actually pay people who write for their site, and they don't pay us, but that's fine. We're all good friends here. No, they're awesome, and let's go listen to some Fishbone. Take care, everybody.
Not in the black world, and it's not really in the white world. It's somewhere in between.
Rock and roll is black, and rock and roll is white.
Gangbangers would be there just like looking at them like, who are these crazy motherfuckers?
We wanted to be known as individuals, not as cats belonging to a neighborhood. We wanted to be known for playing music.
Angelo often would caricature himself, and I told him, it's already weird. You don't have to make it weirder.
Seeing them play like they played before us and being like, whoa, how are we going to follow this?
They should have been the band that went way beyond any of us that were influenced by them.
He's talking about the Bible nonstop. He's talking about the rapture.
I'm going like, oh, he's brainwashing Kendall. I don't know what to do, man.
Kendall told me that the demons had come to kill him.
Norwood Fisher will be arraigned on felony charges of attempted kidnapping.
There's no way that Norwood's intentions were to hurt Kendall. You wanted to stick a rusty pencil in his ear hole and make it go all the way through. That's how mad I was getting.
We certainly don't have any respect for each other, so what's the point?
Got to get the hell up out of here.
I would just surround myself in the music and the performance, and not think about that drab shit, so that we can keep the dream of Fishbone going.
Press the knob that says numb.
He got a lot of separation anxiety. That's why he ain't really forgave nobody that left the band for leaving.
From this camera view, I bet it looks like it's an overly crowded autograph signing.
My business partner lives with his mom, so he doesn't care about elevating above this level of hand-to-mouth living that we're at. At this time, we have the potential to put Fishbone back in the position to have as much audience than we've ever had.
I think it's about time I express myself.
I don't want to be in a band with Dr. Mad Vibe. I want to be in a band with Angelo. I'm forced to be in a band with Dr. Mad Vibe, who I don't want to be in a band with.
Norn and I are kind of like a married couple that want to be divorced for a minute, but we can't because we're married. We got kids. That's the music.
I wish every day the sun would shine. Take me to another place.
You know, people have to be willing to walk through their pain in order to get to the other side of it. And if you don't do that, you never will.
Every day sunshine.
That means a rock star, you're a rock in outer space. You think we'll ever get to outer space without a spaceship and an astronaut's certificate?
Sunshine.